Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. So I'd like to offer my greetings and welcome everyone this evening. So tonight's Dhamma talk is going to be a little different than usual. This one is a special request. So last week there was questions and there was asked to talk this week about the 10 fetters. Um, so these in Pali are called the Samyojana. And so, but in English we translate as the 10 fetters. So fetters, for people who don't know, fetters are like they're bonds, they're like bindings. So, again, it's like a lot of times with some of these translations of Pali terms, we use quite old English terms for it. So, like, it would be back in the old days, be like the prisoner was put in fetters, and so or this was fettered to something else. So these are things which bind us or tie us down. And so when we talk about the 10 fetters, these are the things which, tie us or bind us to this repeated round of rebirth, to samsara. These are the things which tie down our mind to suffering. And so there are 10 of these. There's Sakaya Ditti, which is it's usually translated as like personality view or kind of like a self view. The second one is Vichikicha, which is doubt. The third one is Silabhata Paramasa, which is, we usually translate it as attachment to rites and rituals. It can also be translated as attachment to precepts and practices. It's a few different ways to translate it. The fourth one is kamaraga, which is lust. The fifth one is patika, which is animosity or irritation or indignation. The sixth one is rupa raga, which is attachment to material form. Sometimes, again, it's translated as attachment to fine material form. The seventh one is arupa raga, which is attachment to immateriality. So a lot of times this can mean like arupa jhanas. So these again really really high meditative states. The eighth one is mana or conceit, and in Buddhism again conceit. It's not just the how we view it in English, where a lot of times we think of conceit as I'm better than someone else. In Buddhism, it's any type of the comparing. So it's either I'm better than someone else, I'm the same as someone else, or I'm lesser than someone else. Someone else is better than me. So that's the eighth one, mana. The ninth one is udacha, which is restlessness or mental disturbance, mental agitation. And the 10th one is avijja, which is ignorance, or sometimes translated as like fundamental ignorance. So this is the one in the Paticca Samuppada, so the dependent origination, the root cause of all that suffering. It all comes from this avijja. So again, these are these 10 fetters, these 10 samyojana, these things which bind us. And so as we're practicing and when we get to the point where we start having real breakthroughs and like really becoming the different stages of enlightenment, we cut off certain ones of these. We cut off certain fetters. And when we cut them off, it's, again, it's like cutting a fetter off, like cutting a binding off. We've cut them for good. When we've really cut them off, they won't come back. And there'll be a corresponding like fundamental change in us. So the first one is when we become what's the first level of enlightenment, which is which is a sotapanna or a stream enterer. So again, this is the first level of enlightenment, and to attain that, to get to the first level of enlightenment, you've cut off the three lower fetters. So you've cut off Sakaya Ditti, Vicakicca, and Silabhata Paramasa. So these are the so once you become a stream enterer, um, this is like the fundamental change. There's now like a time frame to be enlightened. You will become fully enlightened in no more than 7 lifetimes. So once you've cut these off, it's like there's no going back. It's like you've pulled the plug on samsara. And so again, these are very deep fundamental changes. And then the next one is the next noble attainment is what's called a sakadagami, or once returner. And so for attaining to once returner, they actually don't cut off any more of the any more fetters, any more of these samyojanas, but they do the attenuation of greed, hatred, and delusion. And so attenuation, this is reducing the power or force or like effect of something. So it's really reducing the power and really cutting down greed, hatred, and delusion. And then, and a lot of times, you think like, oh, well, that doesn't sound like much. All the other attainments, you actually cut off fetters, and Sakadagami, you've only reduced greed, hatred, and delusion. That, it doesn't sound like you're doing too much. But one of my friends, he actually, he thought this way, and he had gone and asked Ajahn Nando about this. He's like, oh, what is this? It doesn't sound like it's so much. So Ajahn Nando actually used an example. He uh he took a water bottle and he poured some out. He poured to about here, and he said, that's the amount of kilesas or defilements you get rid of when you attain to sotapanna. And then he poured it down all the ways down to here near the bottom, and he said, that's the amount of defilements you get rid of when you attain sakadagami. So you see, it's a huge amount. And then he emptied out the bottle completely. And he said, that's when you attain anagami. And then he threw the bottle away and he said, that's when you attain arahant. And so that was the example Ajahn and Nun had given. And so yeah, Sakadagami doesn't sound like much, but the Kruba say that there's a lot done there. And when you've attained to Sakadagami, um, it's called a once returner. So you only have one more life in samsara, and it might be in the human realm, but it might be in a higher up realm, but it's only one more. So again, massive changes. And then when you attain anagami, you've cut off the fetters of kamaraga and of patiga. So you've cut off this lust, and you've cut off this animosity, irritation, indignation. So you've cut these ones off. And when someone attains to anagami, they're what's now known as a non-returner. So they have at most one more life, but it won't be in the human realm. It's going to be up in these, oh, I forget what they're called, like these pure abodes, these special like high realms which anagamis can get to. So it's going to be a pretty pretty easy thing. You're set now. You will become enlightened in no more than one more life. And then when you attain arahant, you cut off the five higher fetters. Um, so rupa raga, which is attachment to material form, fine material form, arupa raga, attachment to immateriality, mana, conceit, udacha, restlessness, mental disturbance, and avijja, ignorance, this fundamental ignorance. So avijja is the last one because again, like I was saying, avijja is the real cause of all this. And of all the of all the suffering, the beginning cause in the Paticca Samuppada. But when we talk about uh, a lot of times, especially in the Thai tradition, when they really talk about the fetters, there's a real emphasis and real focus on the first three of the fetters. So on Sakaya Ditti, Vicakicca, and Silabhata Paramasa, because again, these are the ones that we're working on right now. These are the ones we have to worry about more, and once we've cut these off, we're kind of home free. And so Sakaya Ditti, this personality view, it's usually translated as But it's as far as I understand it, it's really seeing that there's this deep view we have that there's some kind of self, permanent abiding self in the five khandhas, so in these aggregates, in these what we make up as view as ourself, and that either there's some self in it or that we own them, and this real attachment to them. And then Wicikitcha is doubt. And of course, once we hit the point that we've, attained to Sotapanna, yeah, all of our doubts are going to be gone. We've really seen firsthand for ourselves, and we've really made a massive cutoff of our kilesas. So that there will be no more doubt in, the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, no doubt in the path of practice, no doubt that there's fruit to the, and there's like the benefit of doing this practice. And then the third one is Silabhata Paramasa. So again, quite often it's translated as attachment to rites and rituals. Some of the Pali scholars and stuff, they don't really like that translation. So it can be attachments to precepts and practices. So it's as far as I understand, it's really seeing that this belief that by keeping a certain set of precepts or by keeping doing certain practices and stuff, that in and of of themselves, these are going to purify us and these are going to enlighten us. So you can see, for example, like, in some religions, they believe that, say, doing a practice of bathing in certain rivers, keeping this practice up, it's going to purify us. Or, other ones have certain rites. If we just keep this certain practice, then it's going to purify us. And so so yeah, so we break through that. But that's not to say that keeping practices, keeping precepts, and these aren't helpful because these are tools and these are important things for us to work on. So you see it sometimes it can get really confusing with monks. You see the monks and we're practicing to really go beyond conditioned things, to see emptiness in things. And but then we and not to grasp at things, but then we keep these rules really strictly. And we have all these rules, all these conventions around us. So sometimes it can seem like it's a bit of a contradiction. But really when you can use these things and we use them as tools. We use these our rules, our precepts, our practices as tools to help us out. And so really understanding that these are tools and that they're just to help us, but keeping them in and of themselves isn't necessarily what's going to purify us. So, it's, if you think, okay, if I just keep the five precepts perfectly, then I'll be completely purified. But it's like, yeah, these five precepts are a great tool. The Buddha encouraged us to, but it's not the precepts themselves which are going to just purify us. So again, these are the the three lower fetters that we hear more about. But it's important also to remember that these fetters, they're actually really strong. These are really, really, really powerful fetters. So it takes a lot of work to really, really cut through them, to really release us from them and remove them completely. So sometimes, you can, the way they're presented, it can sometimes you can feel like, oh, well, this is really easy. So like when I was a layman, I was just a teenager and I got this book on Buddhism. It was by just a lay teacher in America. And when she was talking about the attainment of Sotapanna, so like the first level of enlightenment, the stream enterer, and the removing the three lower fetters, she spoke about in such a broad, general way that, I was reading this and I was like, oh, well, I must be a Sotapanna then, Yeah, I don't doubt in Buddhism. Yeah, I know that rituals are just external and yeah, I know the body's not self, it's made up of things. We learned this in high school, right? It's made up of all kinds of different elements. I took chemistry, I took it, we took anatomy, um, and but luckily I didn't tell anyone. And then when I actually finally realized what a Sotapanna was, I was really glad I didn't tell anyone. I was like, oh, yeah, I'm nowhere near there. So so when we attain these things, you know, so like becoming enlightenment, the different levels of enlightenment, they're what the Buddha called Utri Manusa Dhammas. So these are superhuman attainments. So it does take a lot of work and a lot of effort to to break these fetters, to really become enlightened. But it's sometimes when we um, talk about the fetters, and I think sometimes it can lead to different types of misunderstandings amongst people, or people sometimes can misunderstand them. So they can think, okay, well, this is this certain fetter I've got to work on. So I'll really work specifically on this, like work on overcoming, my doubts, or uh, and or silabata paramasa, seeing attachment to rites and rituals. So, maybe I won't keep any precepts. And so that's kind of that, that's a wrong view. Or you might see, yeah, like I don't need to work on uh certain aspects of the path because they're in higher up fetters. So for example, um you get rid of lust at when you attain anagami, it's the fourth of the fetters. So you're like, well, I won't do anything about my lust. I won't do any body contemplation, won't do any of that yet, because that's a higher up one, or, you really get rid of like, the animosity, the irritation again at the Sotapanna. So it's like, oh, I'm not going to practice any metta. I'm not going to work on any of my irritation, any of my anger and stuff. And again, this is really like wrong view on it. So, it's like you may think, okay, the roots of these come from, ignorance, or come from this. And the way to get rid of them is, yeah, to remove the roots, which is absolutely true. But it's sometimes you've got to cut through those branches and stuff to get to the roots. So you do have to, we work on reducing our greed, hatred, and delusion throughout our practice. So so sometimes it can also, when you're hearing a big long list like this, all these things, it can sometimes confuse on practice. So you're like, well, I'm not enlightened yet, I'm not a Sotapanna yet. So hearing all that, like, what do I do for practice now? How does this change? But we just keep continue practicing, how we have been practicing, you know developing our sila, our morality, the way we behave, um, our samadhi, our meditation, and our panya, our wisdom. So we keep developing the eightfold path, just the way we've been doing it all along. And it's practicing this path and developing this path, and that's what's going to start cutting these fetters. And again, like I said, they take time, and so and then sometimes, so you just have to keep going, have to keep going. And sometimes there'll be an experience and you'll feel, oh, I really broke through. But again, you just keep on practicing. So like Lumpur Buddha Dasa would say, there's a lot of little nibbanas before you get the big nibbana. So you're going to get a lot of these experiences, little experiences, before you get the big experiences. So I would like to offer that as a bit of a reflection on the 10 fetters for everyone this evening.